Okay. Hold on a second. You good then? We're good to roll?
Yeah, I'll do.
5, 4, 3, 2, 1. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. Left Coast Caveman, number 69. The cast. Left Coast Caveman is supreme being through modern hunting and gathering. And today's cast, we will talk specifically about modern hunting and gathering. And I think it's important to remind everybody what the cast is all about. The cast is where we discuss these fitness modalities, nutritional modalities, and mentalities for supreme being, which is implied in modern hunting and gathering. Such as, I wanted to share with you what I'm sipping on for today's cast. I can't, wait, hold on. There we go. Let's see if I can get a clear, there we go, boom. Sipping on some organic Duncan Mills local tea shop. Rooibos mixed with organic turmeric comfort. All kinds of high-end nutrients in here. And if you're interested in high-end nutrients, you better stick around, because after we get through Primal Primers, we'll be going into Sapien Strength, which breaks down all of the micronutrients, all of the higher level types of nutrition for the supreme sapien. But before we get there, we're covering off on Primal Primers. Primal Primers is one of our macro programs. And I would say Primal Primers implies, if you're going to try to define it in one simple sentence, would be the most practical and accessible well-being modalities that every human should do every day. Would you agree?
It's your foundation.
It is the foundation, indeed. And so what we do at Left Coast K-Man, we are a community of people for supreme being, and we share these ideas back and forth, and we solidify these ideas in the format of macro programs. And in the solidification process, we do this cast and we discuss and we vet. However, that doesn't mean that discussion is over. I would say that as human beings have always been, it's a process of evolution, it's a process of discovery, it's a process of unpacking these ideas to determine how should we best apply these things through modern hunting and gathering as we do it now. And as we discussed on the previous cast, the hunting and gathering process, which is Primal Primer number 12, the nutritional modality number 12 in the Primal Primers program. This idea of modern hunting and gathering, it's the activities, the process, the base level, like you're indicating, the base level processes through which we obtain the necessary components of surviving and thriving, as you so eloquently put it. And so taking that step right there, the modern hunting and gathering, we have a lot of choices of what we're going to hunt and gather. And specifically this week, we're talking about nutritional modalities. But that doesn't, when we talk about supreme being through modern and hunting and gathering, the implication is modern hunting and gathering is also fitness modalities, mentalities, everything that you put into your body as an energy system that you take it in and your output will be either subpar supreme or towards supreme, which is what we aim for. But before we get into the specifics of the nutritional modalities, anything regarding modern hunting and gathering that you would wish to add?
Oh, we're good. Let's roll.
You're keeping it right on point today. But with regard to modern hunting and gathering, Primal Primer step 20, eat the earth. And again, keeping in mind that Primal Primers aren't a sequential set of system, it's a system that's working in the background at all times. It's a system that, again, practical and accessible health, well-being tips that everybody should be applying as a human being every single day. And so eat the earth. This is sort of flies in the face of influenza, what you can find out there that would suggest that nutritional modalities ought to be exclusive to one specific category. And at Left Coast Caveman, what we promote is a variety of categories and a variety of modalities with regard to nutrition. And we ask what are the implications of or intentions of a specific nutritional modality. And so Eat the Earth, I believe we landed on in a response to influenza. What I tend to notice out there is a categorization and a demonization modality, which, for example, you have your keto folks out there, you have your carnivore folks out there, you have your vegan folks out there, you have your, et cetera, et cetera. And the Eat the Earth modality, I believe, started in response to that and saying that, wait a minute, the earth, in our primal sense, before we had all of this information at our fingertips, how were we determining what we should put into our body and not? And there were a few things. Seasonality. So what's in season, what's available to the sapien, what's available to the human being right now, and I would say outcome. What's the outcome of putting that into your body? What's your intention? Are you eating just to survive? You're not going to have a carnivore protocol if you're out in the wilderness and you're looking for food, and that could be a real circumstance real quick. As food's getting very expensive, people are going to have to kind of mitigate what it is that they choose to put into their body, not based on some kind of fancy programming, but what's available and what will, like you said last week or the week before on 68, what will be most applicable to surviving and thriving.
Yeah,
and with that,
I mean, think about sourcing from your environment and how different that is now as to before. How much more separate we are, in terms of the sources of our foods, and I think that's where there becomes a great deal of problems to the modern Homo sapien, is we've become so removed from that source, from eating from the earth. How many steps removed is our food these days from the earth, right? It comes in a package. Well, how did you get to that package? And all the processes that led up to it. Some of the ingredients might have started in the earth, but through step, B, C, D, E, and F, the product was contaminated, was tainted, was reduced, was enriched, as they like to call it, by adding these things that are supposed to be in our best interests or help the crops grow faster or make it taste better. So I think that's a big essence, a big theme of Eat the Earth, is literally to almost take that kind of literally, how close can you eat in terms of that product coming from the earth and going into your body. Now, within reason, of course, right? Not all of us have a garden. I think it is reasonable for everybody to have a garden. I don't have a big yard. I have a driveway, in essence, a large driveway, and I constructed planters and I filled them up. And but anybody, you can grab a few, you can some dishes, you can find a way. And I'm not saying you're gonna sustain yourself from that, but it's kind of a cool practice to get into. And I tell you what, man, there is such a mental change when you eat from your garden. Today I had, as you saw last time you were at the lair, you saw my spinach come to fruition. I'm about to have a salad with my spinach today, and man, it's a whole different experience when you eat something that you grew, that you tended, that you planted the seeds, that the soil. It's really cool, and I just feel like there's so many of us out there that don't even know what that feeling's like.
Yeah, absolutely. And that brings us into the other modalities within Primal Primers, which I think the two go well together, which is why they're situated right beside each other in Primal Primers. 20 and 21 is the conversation around organic, in which I also added locality. And so I think a more cave terminology needs to be determined, or just call it eating cave style. Eat the earth obviously implies from the earth, from the ground. Even if you're eating animals, what do they eat? Essentially, they're eating from the earth, and you want to be cognizant and want to be aware of what were their sources of nutrition before you put it into your body, which is where we get grass-fed, grass-finished beef and all of these things. But I think it's this idea of both opening up your horizon to not be like the earth, eating the earth, expanding your breadth of nutrition to include all that which is nourishing to your path. And to be open-minded rather than to be oriented in this state of fear as a result of influenza, to say, oh, I can't eat this, I can't eat that because of this, because of that, where it's really look how animals survive. And we are technically of the Animalia species, kind of, we're warm-blooded organisms that breathe oxygen, and and have a heartbeat and all these kind of things. I mean, how do they sustain life? How do they survive and thrive? You're not going to be partisan to a specific program if you are trying to survive in the wilderness. So how do we expand that into a modern hunting and gathering environment? Well, noticing that, look, there's going to be everything that comes from the earth is either nourishing or diminishing to your path. And like you mentioned, taking a hard look at, all right, how far removed is that from the earth? How far removed is that from its primal state? Which is where we get into modality 21 within Primal Primers, which is organic and locality. The implication in the cave terminology there and the action behind it, like the cave implementation of that is obviously within reason. How closely can you revert back to that primal source? Whether it's eggs, whether it's meat, sourcing meat locally, sourcing anything like as local as possible means as close to your backyard, and then as far removed as possible is large scale manufacturing where you have no idea where the source is. And then there's everything in between, and all of this is within the realm of modern hunting and gathering, and all of the primal primers that we teach at leftcoastcaveman.com. Go to leftcoastcaveman.com, hit join the cave, and you can get a download of this, because they all work together, because you have to find a mitigation in between. Obviously, you're not going to be able to, or maybe you are, but you can't source the whole earth within your own backyard. So you're going to have to do this hunting and gathering exercise somewhere on both sides of the spectrum, but avoiding as much as possible or altogether not knowing the source at all, or not knowing any of the quality of how that product is made, or trying to avoid all of that while trying to also, as much as you can within your nutritional modalities, source from your own backyard, but then you have to hunt and gather in the middle as well and adhere to some standards.
Yeah. I mean, we're not farmers, right? If we were farmers, then we would spend our whole day, tending our crop, tending our flock to sustain our families, right? We're not. There's a thing called specialization of labor. And as fun as it is to, like, what's that LARP, live action role play as a farmer on the side, right? I think that's what the kids call it these days, LARPing. You can LARP as a farmer, as a hobby, tend to garden and whatnot, but chances are you have a job, right? You have to spend 8-12 hours a day doing something to earn money, and you use that money to buy food. So you outsource the farming to other people. Now that's where that big question comes in, is who are you outsourcing that to? And what I think is really great about, some of the positives of modern hunting and gathering and CPG, grocery stores and such, is that there is a premium. Most manufacturers know that calling out locality is important, and they do it. Most manufacturers know calling out organic is important, kosher is important. All these little labels, those grass-fed, that's important. And so it's becoming a lot easier, more so than ever before, to call out and understand, really, when you're hunting and gathering your potatoes, for instance, it'll tell you where it's from. Oh, these are from Idaho. Okay. Oh, these are organic Idahoan spuds. Outstanding. You know what I mean? Like, there's such an array, and they call these aspects out. People do care. People are waking up to that, which is really great. But of course, there's pricing constraints, availability constraints. I mean, if you go to let's call it like a box store, one of those more value-oriented type stores, you're going to have lesser of organic options, and you might not. Most of those products, it might be cheaper, but you might not be able to know the source. And I'm not saying those are bad products. I mean, all in all, I would say if you're eating close to the earth, like, that's probably the largest, most impactful thing you can do. And I think as you gain in complexity and understanding of these things, like transitioning, if you can, to organic, that's going to be better for you. But to what degree, right? Like, what's your ROI in going from eating a regular potato to an organic potato? Well, that's up to debate, right? That's a hard one to discern. Although, I mean, I would hedge on the bet that with the organics, it's going to be an effect that is subtle and long term. But it's debatable, and I think it's a fun argument to have. And I don't, outside of price, I don't see a lot of downsides, though. As in, yeah, it's more expensive, but okay, what's the negative? I don't think I have one to it, but I could certainly strawman a negative on a non-organic potato, right? And not that it's huge. Like we're talking, splitting hairs almost here, I would think, but I don't know. Maybe it is more nefarious and large. I mean, look around you. A lot of people eat regular potatoes. What's going on? Like, of course, they're eating a lot of other things too, and probably not just sticking to plants and animals.
Yeah. For some reason, your mic's popping a lot whenever it's coming through. I don't know if it's the same for both sides, but I'm hoping that we can clean up the audio a little bit on this. But thinking of the Left Coast Caveman system, thinking of the way we organize our thoughts, the way we organize our modalities, and go to leftcoastcaveman.com. You can download any of these macro programs. We have Primal Primers, Sapien Strength, and then Apex Actualization. And within those programs are modalities, nutritional modalities, fitness modalities, and mentalities, which we discuss here on the cast, which are running in the background of your intentional programming of life at all times, implying that you are on a supreme path, meaning that you are in the business of getting better in life, getting more effective, having more energy, sleeping better, having more vitality, having better sex, having better thoughts, having more cognitive ability, having more focus, having more drive, etc., etc., etc. Assuming you're on that path with us, by going to Left Coast Caveman and clicking join the cave and joining us on this path. Let's assume that. If you're not on the process of that, you're wasting your time here as well. So just look no further. If you're not in the business of getting better, look no further. This isn't for you. But if you are, and thinking about how we categorize information, like you mentioned before, Primal Primers is the base level. It's the most practical, the most accessible fitness, nutrition, and mentality tips for everybody to apply to their lives every single day that will lead them on a path such as we described, towards supreme being, towards getting better, towards having more energy. And I keep coming back to that word energy, because that's the one that is a common denominator within a lot of our modalities that we promote at Left Coast Caveman. And it's managing of this energy metric that's the through line through it all, and thinking of food as essentially units of energy, caloric intake, kcals, units of energy. Then how appropriate is that? But then thinking of this specific conversation, the modern hunting and gathering, the eating the earth, the organic or not organic, and knowing the source and how important that source is with regard to the energy input and energy output of your nutrition. It follows that same level. It follows that same stair step of Primal Primers. Here's the base. Sapien Strength. That would be something of adding on more technologies to the best of your ability. And then, of course, Apex would be, maybe you are a farmer. Maybe you decide then at this point, I'm going to leverage my Apex Actualization community and my Supreme Being Alliance members within the cave to create an organic farm, to create more accessibility for people in the general population to have access to better quality products that avoid pesticides and avoid plastics, etc., etc. But kind of zeroing this all in as managing your energy metric. Well, what kind of are the base level with regard to eating the earth? Let's keeping it to plants, animals, vegetables, fruits, these kind of things, in these metrics, and how they sort of have a higher tiered outcome with regard to accessibility. Like I did a little bit of analysis on just apples. Like an average apple from a major manufacturer is 93 cents. Local level would be $1. Organic level, it can range anywhere from $1.30 to $1.97 per apple. So it's like, obviously there's some levels there with regard to accessibility when you're hunting and gathering, but maybe you can grow an apple tree and have apples in your backyard. That's fair enough. But like kind of zeroing this all into, like, if you're a brand new listener and you're like, well, shoot, like I want to avoid the influencer influenza of, oh, you're going to die if you don't eat, if you eat, base level apples, let's call them, you're going to die. So therefore you must buy my $1.97 apple sourced at bengreenfieldfitness.com, use / Ben Greenfield Fitness, and then you can get an apple for $1.30. Like that's just I'm using that as kind of a euphemism for what the whole archetypal structure. But it's, are you going to die? Like, don't orient yourself in fear. Look, like if you have to like eating the earth implies also that food is good. But if you have to source, I mean, start somewhere. Start by just being aware. We always talk about that, like know your awareness of, oh shoot, I haven't even been paying attention to where I'm sourcing. Well, the first place to start would be like there. Know where your food's coming from. Start making note of that. And then perhaps if you can't afford the next levels up, like at the very least, cave implementation would be like wash them thoroughly, perhaps soak them. And then if you can, source locally, either from your own backyard or from local farmers markets would be next level. And then the organic and certified organic is a whole nother conversation. That is, okay, then you're completely avoiding pesticides and GMOs and chemicals, which is good. But then again, like mitigate back into that knowing your sources, because some CPG companies, like you mentioned, will put a premium on that when they don't really need to. You can go to your local farmers market and just buy organic, and then that's just as good. And so we'll have nutritional guides at leftcoastcaveman.com people can download and kind of understand this stuff a little bit better. But I would say it's most important that people don't orient themselves in fear, and then take action through implementation of these modalities, whether it's just, hey, I can't afford organic, so I'll start washing more and soaking more and being aware of that, and being aware of, look, some of your local grocery stores actually do have organic that's just not that much more expensive. So that'd be a good place to start.
Yeah. And I align with that in terms of, if I see something outrageously priced, I won't buy it. Like if there's a $2 apple, maybe I'm not doing apples, maybe I'm doing bananas this week, or, find something else that's reasonable. And I'm not 100% sure on the validity of this, but there's that idea of that certain food items are more heavily more heavily exposed to pesticides, like berries and such. And some people say that if you're going to go organic, like it's more beneficial to go organic on the more sensitive and items such as that, whereas like a banana that kind of comes equipped in its own packaging is lesser so exposed, right? Of course, you're still going to get those GMOs, which we all know and love, because who wants a tiny? I mean, if you've ever grown a strawberry at home, like they're about this big, whereas if you get the ones at Mega Safeway, they're fucking, they're massive. They're on roids, dude. They're awesome and they're tasty too. But yeah, you're not going to die, right? Like from eating non-organic strawberries that are just pumped the gills with all sorts of chemicals and hormones. Back to what I said earlier, broad strokes, right? Step one, eat the earth. Even if you can't afford organic, that's probably the best thing you can start. Just eat plants and animals, right? And then from there, and cut out all the other stuff. And then as you are able to, and depending on your budget, depending on what's available at your grocery store, because not everything comes equipped. Like there's a lot of times where I can't find a grass-fed tri-tip, and I buy a regular one. It is what it is. Like I'm not going to go hunting all over the place for it. There's only so many stores you can go to in a day. And sometimes you have to go with just the regular, factory farmed, so be it. But like, that doesn't mean that like, all right, well, I'm going to eat hot dogs. So that's, like that, how far removed from like plants and animals is a hot dog? Well, pretty far, a few levels, right? So as long as you're keeping it as natural as possible, like I think you're going to be just fine, and you can fine tune as you go. But broad strokes here, eat the earth.
Agree. Yeah, that's practical and accessible for everybody. And if they implement that alone through their modern hunting and gathering practice, just stop sourcing food that's highly processed and that's packaged, that will lead to supreme being almost immediately. And then the next levels up, sapien strength and apex. As apex as it gets would be like you have your own homestead of all these. You're 100% not relying on any kind of modern hunting and gathering. It's more just your own homestead. That would be like the highest level of apex. But yeah, eat the earth, source local, source in season, Google search, and you can download guides, and we can provide links to those at leftcoastcaveman.com of what's in season. A lot of the times you can avoid the high costs of organic foods just by eating what's local and what's in season. There's going to be plentiful harvests that your local farmers and farmers markets will be needing to get rid of. And that's the same with regard to meat, eating local meat or sourcing, hunting from your fish hatcheries that are loading up the local lakes with trout during a specific time of year. That's all practical and accessible. If affordable, yeah, eat organic, and at minimum, I lost my train of thought. I was saying, like, if you can afford it, eat organic, but at minimum, implement the other two modalities. And at minimum, like you're saying, implement Eat the Earth. I don't want to let completely go of this idea of food as energy, and like what you mentioned earlier of just, there's not going to be a definite noticeable, eating the earth will immediately and noticeably impact your health. The difference between eating the earth and eating organic and certified organic, maybe not as noticeable. And you have a huge body of work out there that we refer to as influenza that promotes fear. All the time I'm scrolling through my feed and I'll see, oh yeah, they're putting such and such in the food, and this pesticide's going to grow your testicles are going to fall off, and you're all of a sudden you're going to turn into a female, and you're going to start, whatever they're saying. And there might be some truth in that. But what creates more negative energy in your life than fear? And just on the flip side of that, how much positive energy are you putting into your body by doing like what you do at the Crockett Cave, and that feeling that you get that from eating a head of spinach that you cultivated with your hands? You can't live on that, but how much positive energy you put into your body, and how the outcome of that positive energy feeds your life unifying purpose and what you desire to do with your body in time. It feeds it. It's immeasurable, but it's immeasurable. Meaning there's not going to be a scientific body of research that will absolutely prove without a doubt that that's healthier for you. The nutritional content is probably about the same, but that energy metric, that managing that energy. I remember there was a female that I was very close to in college that she said that there's a principle, and I know we've talked about this before on the cast, called ASHE, AXE, which is also, it's some sort of I think it's a Muslim belief, or her specific type of Muslim, or maybe it was just Pakistani, that the energy that you put into an animal when you slaughter it is the energy that you consume into your body, and that it's transmitted through blood. And I think it's likewise with halal certified or kosher meat. It's I think a similar principle. And I was listening to Nikolai I'm gonna probably butcher the name, Nikolai Velimirovich. Nikolai Velimirovich quote that I think ties this idea up. And that is like the idea of energy in your food. And of course, the more you eat the earth, the more positive that energy is that you're putting into your body, and therefore the more positive the outcome, and the more you can feed your life unifying purpose through that. But on the flip side, if you have to source, like you said, I'm at the grocery, I can't always get grass-fed, organic, grass-finished beef. Well, don't take that in. Don't consume that meat with a negative energy associated with it. Like, oh my gosh, I'm going to die if I do this, which I think is what influenza is all about. Let's promote fear for the sake of selling products, for the sake of, now you can go to hashtag this and that and use my promo code in order to source your meat. I appreciate the awareness factor, because obviously we wouldn't be sitting here talking about it if the awareness wasn't brought to our attention through influenza. But there has to be a switching of, okay, forget all of that. What can we actually do? And Eat the Earth is a perfect modality for that. But this sort of man is not your work. And this is by Nikolai Velimirovich, was a saint, or he's a saint in the Orthodox Church. And this is a publication referred to as Prayers by the Lake. So obviously he's talking to God, he's talking to the universe, he's talking to Atum, whatever you want to call it, the maker of man, the intelligent system behind man. And he's saying, this sort of man is not your work. This sort of man created himself. His name is disease. How is there ever disease in your hand? His name is fear. How could fear ever come from the fearless one? His name is malevolence. And what I take from that is that the further removed we get from the natural state of man, the more malevolent. The more malevolent, the more opportunity for fear. The more fear, the more opportunity for disease. And just that simple chain of actions.
Yeah, they sell the problem that they solve, right? And if you want to be really good at selling, you want to definitely tie the story behind that problem, and perhaps even augment that problem. And that's exactly what they do. And sometimes, there are problems to be called out. There are things to be cognizant of. Unfortunately, we're in a day and age where there's way too many problems and way too many possible solutions that people are peddling. And that's how you create industries, right? That's why you can sell an apple for $2 as opposed to $1, right? Because they're clearly, that people will pay it. People are afraid of black tape, and maybe you should be afraid of black tape, right? I'm trying to steel man it a little bit here that there are a lot of problems called out there, and you can drive yourself crazy constantly scrolling these problems that are out there that can only be solved by these certain modalities that are, oh, by the way, really profitable for certain companies and whatnot. So don't let fear run you. Back to the energy piece. You are what you eat, right? You are all those constituent parts, all of what you source from the ground, what you source from animal. It all gets broken down into carbon. That's one of those really cool ideas that got stuck in my mind. Even if you're eating the protein eventually gets, unless it's getting used as, constituent parts of the body, your protein can be broken down through the liver, and now it's in the form of glucose. And glucose is, carbon, hydrogen, and oxygen. And you break down those carbons, right? That's through the process of, glycolysis and such. And so you think about that energy, that carbon, you're burning carbon. You are carbon. It's kind of a cool circular system. You breathe out carbon dioxide. That's part of that carbon that you consume through those potatoes. And I think it's really interesting to manage, and back to the energy piece. And I came across a great quote the other day was, don't manage your time, manage your energy. And tying it into food, well, that's something you can certainly manage. That's something you have auspice over. You control what comes into your mouth, what you put into your mouth, fork to mouth, you control that. You manage that. And that's your energy.
Hopefully we gave it a good run on Eat the Earth, modern hunting and gathering, and organic. I think there's probably more to be discussed on this topic, but I like what you said just about, look, at the very least, eat the earth, and this mentality of avoiding the packages and bringing it as closely back to the primitive state as possible. And if it's got good, clean dirt on it from your own backyard, that's the way you ought to eat it. If in taking that two other steps in the middle would be the organic step. You didn't come from your own backyard, but you're sure that dirt doesn't have pesticides and chemicals and GMOs on it. Great, that's a good thing to eat from a local farmer's market that's in season. That's perfect. You're in the sweet spot. But if none of that is practical and accessible to you, don't be so afraid, and be cognizant of the fact that the problem that a lot of these influencers are solving is perhaps a little bit overinflated. Yeah, we should avoid pesticides. I do wash my fruits and vegetables thoroughly if they're not from a organic or certified organic or local source, which has to happen sometimes. Sometimes I'm eating eggs that aren't from my own backyard. I'm trying to solve for that, as I'm reading a chicken book with my daughter on what's the minimum confinement space that I need to have chickens in my own backyard. I have to eat some eggs in the middle. And I'm not going to be afraid of the fact that I'm eating eggs from a non-organic, and I'm just getting my nutrition. I'm eating from the earth, period. And that will lead to better well-being. So mitigate the fear bug by keeping that energy positive as you consume the earth.
And just thinking through that, what you just said about washing your fruits and vegetables, I can understand doing that if you're obviously trying to wash off some residual pesticides or whatnot. But when you think about the organic side, maybe you shouldn't wash your fruits and vegetables. And I do wash all my stuff. I'm just now kind of reconsidering that practice. It's like maybe the soil residual is good for me. Maybe the bacteria is good for me. Maybe those things, certainly for my garden. I think I even washed the things I pulled out of my garden. I harvested some potatoes maybe a month ago, and I did wash them off. And maybe I should. Maybe obviously don't consume clumps of dirt, but maybe I'm washing off some of those other incremental nutrients that might benefit the body, right? I don't know. Could be practice.
No, we have a minute and a half left, and I'll say that we should tee that up for next time. It could be a quick 30-minute cast on washing. As a follow-up to this, we do a quick cast on the modalities and the implementations on eating the earth. And that's one of them, because there's more that I have to. It's not so simple as wash or not to wash. There's methods of washing. So if it's pesticides, I'm scrubbing it down. If not, sometimes on the organic stuff, like with a carrot, I'll just run some really clean filtered drinking water on it and just kind of rub it with my hands and trying to consume those minerals. 30 seconds left. Keep it cave. Keeping it cave isn't as simple as on or off. It's modalities. Right. Join the cave. If you're interested, join the cave.
Dirty vegetables are sexy. I'm gonna start eating them that way.
The carrot, you got to go slow. Just give it a couple strokes, and then it's good to go. But you want to leave some of that dirt on there for the minerals.
Yeah,
if it's clean dirt.
Yeah.
If it's not, you got to scrub it hard. Real hard. That's another topic, man. I've been doing this longevity cycle. Taoist, keeping the seed retention, retaining for a specific period of time. If you're interested in any of this stuff, join the cave.